Sai Ram. Sai Ram to all my brothers and my sisters. And I thank you so much for this lovely invitation to share my journey with you. It has been a wonderful journey, and it came completely unexpected. But I would not change it to save my soul. It has been a fabulous, fabulous journey. So what I would like to do is start out at the very beginning. I call this Harveen's story. I once had a friend, a dear, dear friend. She has since made her transition. But when she was here, we were best of friends. And one day, this is how she started. She is the catalyst. She is the person who is responsible for my coming to Swami. Not saying that he's not responsible, but she was the person, she was the catalyst. And what happened was we were in a choir together. And in this choir, it was a beautiful choir. We had 2 Grammy nominations for us. We had 2 Grammy nominations. We were semi-professional. We sang with Chicago symphonies and all kinds of things like that. But so it was a great choir. And when we went to choir rehearsal one evening, Harveen was reading a book. And the book was called Sai Baba Avatar. So I was kind of looking over her shoulder. Everything was kind of interesting, except, I had no thought that any of it was true. It seemed magical. It seemed mystical, that kind of thing. And I was looking over her shoulder as she was reading, and she knew that. And so she would turn the page, and I wasn't through with the part I was reading. But I knew what she was doing. She was coaxing me to ask questions. And so what she did, in a minute or so, I asked her what it was she was reading. And so that she could encourage me to continue asking questions, she said something very nonchalant. She said, "It's about the avatar." And I thought, okay. It's a foreign word to me. I had no clue what was an avatar. So I asked her, I said, I'll play the game. And I asked her, I said, so what is an avatar? And once again, kind of nonchalant, she said, an avatar is the full incarnation of God. So I thought to myself, well, I belong to a metaphysical church, New Thought, and the church taught that God is everywhere, evenly present. God lives in all things, in everybody. So I thought, okay, this must be what she means. I knew that much. And so I asked her, I said, so the one thing that kind of confused me was that it was just one sentence that she said that kind of had me startled. And so I asked her again, I said, so what does that mean? And she said, well, it means that God lives in India. He's in a body right now on earth. Okay, I continued with my confusion. And I asked her again, I said, what do you mean God is in a body on earth? I just repeated what she said. And then she repeated her statement back to me a little slower, as if I needed some translation. And she said, I mean, God is in a body on earth, and he lives in India. Okay. Now my curiosity really was piqued. And so once she repeated it, and I thought to myself, God lives in India. What does that, I'm still saying to myself, what does that mean? Because, I know God is in the ethers. God is everywhere. God is evenly present in all beings and all things. So what do you mean he lives in India? And she started to explain it. And she said, God is in a human body in India right now. And once she explained it, it was really, I was really confused. And once she explained it, I asked her, I said, well, where did you get the book? Can I possibly get a book? And she said, yes, I'll bring you a book in a couple of days. I'll bring you one. And she did. In 2 days, she brought me a book. And she told me about a meeting, but I thought, I don't want to attend any meetings. And so I took the book and I took it home. And what I typically did, I didn't really, when I went to lunch or something, I typically didn't go into the cafeteria and gossip and do things like that. I liked to be alone. And to read this particular book, I definitely wanted to be alone. And so when I started reading the book, and this was kind of my first experience with Sai Baba, when I started to read the book, I was all alone in a lounge. And I opened the book and started to read. I got a little nervous about what I was doing. I thought, okay, you don't need to jump into all this stuff. You don't need to do this. You don't understand Jesus that well. And now you're ready to run off and do something else. Now, maybe you need to leave this alone. And so what I did, I closed the book. When I closed the book, I heard these words as if somebody was standing in the room beside me. I heard the words, there is no need to fear. There's only one. So I thought about that for a minute. And I thought, well, you're not prone to do foolish things and follow foolish people. You've never had that problem. You're pretty steady. So what are you really afraid of? And I thought about it for just a minute. And I opened the book. I reopened the book. And when when a picture falls on the picture, the picture is made of different paper than the rest of the text. And when I opened the book, it fell on Sai Baba's picture. But what I could see around the picture was the shadow of the face of Jesus. It wasn't in the book, but there was a shadow of Jesus's face just superimposed over Sai Baba's. The words came back to me. There's no need to fear. There's only one. Subsequently, it took me probably 2 days, 3 days at the most, to finish the book. I just could not put it down. And she had told me about this meeting, but I wasn't interested. I still heard her though. And the meeting was a couple days from then. And I wanted to go to the meeting. She had told me the time, the place, and everything, and it was in my head. And I wanted to go. And so that first Friday, I showed up. And she was the one who answered the door, even though it was not her house. It was the house of Mrs. Bessie Thomas. She had the meetings in her house. And so Harveen was the one who came to the door, but she stood there kind of just looking at me. And I thought, okay, I must be here on the wrong date, wrong time, something. She's just staring at me. And I said, it's Friday, isn't it? And she said, yes. I said, it's 7 o'clock. She's just looking at me. And she said, oh, I'm sorry. Come in, welcome. So I came in. And there were, I would say, about 20 people there, all African American, and mostly from the choir that we all belong to. And so, they were having some snacks and talking. And then they began to gather around to watch a video. The video was called Sai Baba Avatar. And so I got up, they placed me in a seat, and I was prepared to watch the video. The video began. I can't tell you how I felt when I first saw Sai Baba. He was walking quietly, calmly through a crowd of people, and he was taking letters, speaking to people, and creating something from the palm, looked like from the palm of his hand. I had no clue what any of this was. And the video, I would say, was maybe an hour. Beautiful video. And when the video was over, these other the other people from the members of the center had already seen everything. And so what happened was, when the video was over, all eyes turned to me. And I was so overjoyed. My chest, my heart was just full. I almost couldn't breathe. And when everyone was looking at me, one person said, so what do you think? And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, how do I get to India? I just wanted to know, how do I get there? I have to experience this. It took me probably a year before I made my first pilgrimage. But I finally went. Now, that was my first real experience with Sai Baba. My second experience was, there was a regional conference coming up, and I signed up to attend. And everybody was preparing, and we were getting ready to go, and we were all going to go in a group. And one night, I was washing dishes in my kitchen, and I got a little emotional. I got real teary, and I got a little emotional because of this. There was, behind my wall in my kitchen were all these little bitty yellow flowers. When I faced my sink, there were all these, it looked like thousands of little bitty yellow flowers. And I was talking to myself, and I said, I was very formal with Swami at that point. There was no Swami, and it was Sathya Sai Baba, sir. That's the way I addressed him. And I looked at these yellow flowers and I thought, I asked this question. I said, Sai Baba, sir, please don't let this be one of those situations that I only get to see other people's situations, experiences, or hear about other people's experiences and never get to have my own experience. And I was really upset about it because in my lifetime, I felt like I was always in the back, always last. And so I asked him that question. I said, please don't let this be one of those situations. And I got over it. And so we went to the retreat. And at the retreat, the keynote speaker was John Hislop. And some of you probably know John Hislop, remember him. He was very, very close to Swami. Well, he was our keynote speaker that weekend. And so I had heard about him. I was looking forward to listening to him and tell stories about Sai Baba and his closeness and the fantastic things that he had done. And I was looking forward to this. And so when Dr. Hislop was introduced, I got up on one knee and snapped a picture. And I was probably midway the audience. And I snapped this picture, nothing grand, nothing extraordinary, just a picture. And so I sat back down and John Hislop began to speak. Wonderful stories, fabulous stories. The retreat was wonderful. It was my first one. I met a lot of people, all of that. And now came my trip. Now, before I went on this, before I did my pilgrimage, you know, you used to have to go and to Walgreens and have your film developed. I know I'm dating myself. You used to have to go and have your film developed. So I had taken my film to Walgreens to have it developed. And when I got the film back, I gasped for breath. Because in my film, in my pictures, was this huge, there was Dr. Hislop at the end, and there was this huge orange light. That light seemed to stream over the people's heads. Huge orange light that was not in the room when I took the picture. It was actually in the negatives, as if it was there, but it was not there. And nobody else could figure out what it was. They actually had me take it to professional photographers to see what it was. But it was there and it was in the negatives. I was so thrilled because Sai Baba, sir, had answered my prayer. I was not left out. I had my own. I was so excited about that the next retreat we had, I think I made about 400 copies and passed them out to everybody. It was an experience to be had. And so that was, I would say second, but that was a wonderful experience with Baba, and he answered my prayer. So now it's time for me to take my trip to India. And everybody had told me that you won't be able to find anything in India. Oh, you won't be able to find toilet paper, soap, just nothing. You won't be able to find anything. So you better take as much as you can. I took 2 duffel bags, 2 army duffel bags, as tall, both of them as tall as me. I had everything you could think of in that bag or those bags. I mean, everything you could think of. I became the ashram joke because somebody would say, you know, I could use a hammer and some nails. And they would laugh and look at me and say, and they would say, Crystal, do you have hammer and nails in your bag? And I would go into that bag head first and pull out hammer and nails, mops, brooms. I had everything, you know, campsite size, but I had everything I thought I could possibly need. And so while I was packing for my trip, I was still unsure about what I was doing. Even though I had that experience, I was still kind of questioning what I was doing. What are you doing? You've never been out of the country. You're going to India all alone. What are you doing? And I was packing my gigantic bags, and this thought came to me, and it said, this prayer came to me. And I said, Sathya Sai Baba, sir, if you are who you are, if you are who you say you are, you will say these magic words to me somehow. Now, for the sake of the story, because the words were personal to me, and so I never really say them to other people. But for the sake of the story, I'll say the words. The word was Rumpelstiltskin. Now, I thought it would never come up in a common conversation. Who in India knows the story of Rumpelstiltskin? So nobody was going to suddenly say that word because it's an American fairy tale. So now that wasn't the real word, but I chose a word that was personal to me that would not come up in ordinary conversation. And so off I went to Puttaparthi. Longest flight in the world, I felt. And so I'm on my way. I'm thinking crazy thoughts about what the heck am I doing? I should get off at the next flight, at the next stop, and go back home, all kind of crazy things. And so when we got to India, before we landed, I wanted this whole full experience. And so what I wanted to do was close my eyes just before the plane landed so that I could feel that feeling of exactly where Sai Baba lived. And that's what I did. And so I had gotten out of the plane, got my bags, and searched for a taxi. Now, I'm a cold-natured person, so I dress for cold planes, cold buses, air conditioning. I have to dress. So I had on, you're gonna laugh, I had on an orange melon-colored sweatsuit. gym shoes, socks, and it had to be 100 degrees in the shade. I was hot and sweaty, but I was here. So I got in the taxi, and what an adventure that taxi ride was. Cows, oxen, dogs, cats, all going every which way, no order. I thought, I don't know what I thought. But I survived it. And so I'm on my way to Puttaparthi. I'm happy. And so the taxi driver, he hoisted my bags up on top of his taxi, probably thought I was a nut with all this stuff. And off to Puttaparthi we went. So he pulls into the gates, the gates at Puttaparthi. He pulled into the gates and pulled up to the accommodations office. And so I saw people just walking in a certain direction. And the taxi driver tells me, he says, "Go, have darshan." And I went, "What?" And he says, go, have darshan." And I thought to myself, well, do I look like a fool? Do I look crazy? So you expect me, now I'm from Chicago. I call myself a chocolate drop from Chicago. I'm from Chicago, and you expect me to leave my prized possessions on top of your taxi and walk off somewhere and not even know where I'm going. That's what you think I'm going to do. But I thought to myself, okay, wait a minute, stop. You're not in Chicago anymore. I said, leave the bags and go have darshan. I had no idea what darshan really was. But I left the bags and I went. I followed the people. And so when I got to darshan, when I got to the darshan area, they wouldn't let me in. They had already closed the area and nobody could get in anymore. But every once in a while, I could see where the people's heads were turned, and I would assume that's because Swami was there. And I couldn't see anything, the top of his hair when he went a certain way. And I would try to get on, if there were some stoops there. I would climb up on one of the stoops to see if I could see over the fence. Couldn't really, but the volunteers, the Seva dolls, and we all know them and love them, they would chase me away. Get down, get down, get down. And they would chase me away. And so they chased me a couple of times. I tried to see. And so what I said was, I said, Sathya Sai Baba, sir, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm here. That's all I said. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm here. Just then, Swami stepped off the step. There was like a stoop or something. Just then, Swami stepped out of the gate, walked about 6 feet, turned and looked directly in my face. I knew nothing about putting my hands up, nothing. I was just standing there in this dumb orange sweatsuit and these gym shoes. And he looked directly into my face and smiled as if to say, I got you. I know you're here. And then walked away. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this is not happening. And so what I did was I was ready to go back. He had gone into what I later learned was the Purnachandra Hall. And the people had started getting up and moving about. And I was about to go back to my taxi, which I was not expecting to be there. And when I heard a voice, little voice, and the voice said, hello, sister. And when I turned around, it was a woman named L. Sorensen. And I had met her at the retreat where I took the picture of the orange light. And neither of us knew that the other was going to be there. And we just so happened at that particular time to be the only two African American women there. There was another gentleman. And I looked at her and I was very surprised that she was there. And she said, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were coming. And I said, and neither did I, or we would have made some better plans. And so she had been coming since the 70s. So she knew everything. And I believe, as a matter of fact, I know that Swami placed her with me because once again, I knew nothing about what I was doing. And we spent the entire trip together. And so I went back to accommodations. The taxi driver was still there and everything was wonderful. So El True and I stayed together the entire time. And so what happened, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I don't forget anything. What happened was one day we were in the room and El True and I were talking. And I know she wasn't staying the entire time with me. I was staying until, and these words, this phrasing will be important in a minute. But I was staying until the 27th. And so I asked her, I said, well, El True, when are you leaving? When are you going home? And she said, well, I'm leaving on the 14th because, she had a husband and a young son. And she said, I'm leaving on the 14th because, Scott wants me home for the holidays. I would love, to stay, but Scott wants me home for the holidays. And I said, a very selfish prayer. I said, oh, I wish you could stay with me. I wish you could stay till the 27th with me after Christmas. She said, oh, no, he won't hear of it. And we let it go. Of course, her husband wanted her home. She had a child. She needed to go home. So we let it go. Next day, she and I got called in for my first interview. I think I grinned so big, my face got tired. And so we went into the interview room and we were sitting there, and it was about, it was the 9th, actually. I remember it well. It was December 9th. And so we're sitting there and everybody's happy and smiling and Swami is talking and different languages. This is just magical to me. And he's speaking in all these people's languages, and he's talking about the decorations that are going, because they were putting up Christmas decorations, and how happy everybody was and all of this. And so he looks over at El True and he says, "When are you leaving?" And, you know, he asks people this all the time. He said, "When are you leaving?" And she says, "Well, I'm leaving on the 14th, Swami. You know, my husband wants me home for the holidays." And Swami seemed to look up in the air, and then he looked back at her and he said, "No, 27th after Christmas." Exactly the way I worded it in the room. Because she had told me the only way her husband would allow her to stay would be if Swami told her to. And we just did not expect him to tell her to. So we let it go. And Swami said, "No, 27th after Christmas." She was able to leave the same day that I did. And so she went out into the village, found a phone and called her husband, and she was making faces because she thought he was gonna. And she said, "Oh, Swami told me to stay until the 27th after Christmas." And I could hear him talking, and he said, "Well, then you stay to the 27th after Christmas." It was magical. And so we were there, happy, very, very happy, as Swami says it himself. And so let's see, right now, you know, that was my first trip. It was magical, as I said. It could not have been more perfect. I got an interview, everything was perfect. And so once again, you know, I had little questions, but once again, when Swami in the interview room, what happened was he started talking again after this talk with El True. He started talking again to the people about the decorations and about Christmas coming and everything. And then he looked at me, and he didn't try to weave it into a story or make up something. He just looked at me right in the face and said, "Rumpelstiltskin," or the magic word that I had substituted for it. You could have mopped me up. He didn't try to fix it and put it in anything else. He just said it to my face. From that point on till this, I have no doubts who he is. I have no doubts what he is. I believe in my heart of hearts that he is that God that lives in India, that's in a body, that's on earth right now, that my friend Harveen McGee told me. And I'll tell you a couple of little leelas and a couple of experiences I had in the interview room. The first one I want to tell you about is, let's see, I just want to tell you something he told me one day. And he told me, he asked me in the interview room, he said, I wasn't married at the time. I'm still not married. And he asked me in the interview room, where's your husband? And I wasn't married. I knew he must know I'm not married. So this means something else. And so he said, where's your husband? And I kind of shrugged my shoulders like I had no clue what he was referring to. And he said, he said these words to me. He said, I know. And he did his fingers like this, like somebody walking away. He said, you once had a man to run away from you, and now you are afraid. And when I thought about what he said, I thought, well, this has to be from some previous lifetime. Because, you know, in this lifetime, you have relationships, you break up, it's done. But this must have been something so traumatic or so hard that I didn't want to do this time. That's the way I felt. And he leaned back in his chair and pinched his robe. He said, but Swami is your father. Don't ever worry. I will always take care of you. Once again, you could have mopped me up off the floor. I felt like everything was going to be all right. I was in excellent hands, and I would never need to worry again. So, you know, it was an easement on my heart, it felt like. But the words, I will always take care of you, just resonated. And so the next story I want to share with you, in Puttaparthi, there was a gentleman. He was I guess the director or something like that from Africa. His name was Dare Ongukolate. And he's a great big African gentleman. And so I started doing work for him, typing, doing letters, just simple stuff. And what happened was, a couple of things happened with him. And one of them was, he would say, things would happen like, you all know what Ladu is. I love it. And one day, Swami was passing out Ladu. And it was, so, you know, when the people start scrambling for the Ladu, I would always step back and say, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get in all that. I just couldn't get in all the crowd and everybody reaching for the sacred dolls and all of that. I couldn't do it. And so one day I said, well, Swami, if it's meant for me to have Ladu, I'll have Ladu. And I went home. I went back to the room. Later on, Mr. Dare comes and knocks on my door, and he used to call Swami your father. And he came to the door and he said to me, your father, he says to take this to her. And he had 2 Ladu in his hands. Now he didn't, he said, Swami never said, take this to Crystal. Take this to the skinny little girl. He just knew he meant me. He just instinctively knew he meant me. And he says, your father, he says, take this to her. He hands me 2 ladu. Another situation like that, another a story like that I'll share with you. There was a coconut. You know, every time you go to Puttaparthi, there's a coconut stand, and everybody loves it. And so this particular time I went to India, the coconut stand was not there. And I had befriended a woman. She was from Africa as well. She had 3 children with her. And I helped her with her kids, because that's a long, hard trip. And she was there a long time. And that's a long, hard trip for children. So I was helping her with her kids. And so we were walking, and every day that, I would look and I would say, well, Swami, where is the coconut stand? And I would just keep walking. And she said, what are you talking about? This was her first trip. And she said, what are you talking about, these coconuts? All the time, these coconuts. And so I said, well, there used to be a coconut stand there every time I came. And I don't know. I said, I don't know. Maybe the people misbehaved and they won't have the coconut stand anymore. So I just let it go and kept walking. 2-3 days. Wonder where the coconut stand is. And one day she and I were walking, and she said real loud, she said, oh my God. And I thought something was wrong. I'm looking around, what? And she just pointed, and they were setting up the coconut stand. And she said, I don't know about you and Swami. You asked for that coconut stand, and there it is. Now, I'm not going to take full responsibility for the coconut stand, but I was glad that they were setting it up. And so Mr. Dare, I'll finish this one off with Mr. Dare. Mr. Dare had, I told you earlier, when Swami told me he would always take care of me, he pinched his robe. Well, I didn't know what that meant. And so one day, Mr. Dare came to my room with something in his hand. And I didn't know what was in his hand and what the deal is. He was smiling. And he said, your father, he said to give this to her. And he handed me Swami's robe. Can you see it? He handed me Swami's folded up robe. This was a handkerchief, of Swami's. And so I got the idea that when he leaned back in his chair and pinched his robe, he was saying that he would give me a robe, and then I could rest assured that I was being taken care of. It was a fact. Now, I could tell a whole lot of stories, and I'm not sure what my time is like. But I know there was one story that I would like to tell, and it was about a life-size picture of Swami. And at this particular time, I got like front row, and you know how that coveted front row feels. Hit number 1. I was ecstatic. And I was probably the 3rd person in the line. So I'm going to be in the front at last. And when I got when they ushered us into the ashram, the place was full of people. And I probably was midway the back. And I was upset. How did I get front row and get to sit way back here? I was mad. I was so angry that I said, oh, Swami, when you come in, I'm not going to even look. But of course, when he came in, I could not not look. I had to look. But I was still feeling it because, I was feeling like, wait a minute. They kept saying these were VIPs. And I kept saying, wait a minute. I didn't come all the way to India to still not be a VIP, to still not be important enough. I was upset. And so I went back to my room. And in my room, there was a lifetime picture, a life-size, picture of Sai Baba. And I stood in front of that picture and I was gonna let him have it. I stood in front of that picture and I said, Sai Baba, I did not come all the way over here to be treated like this. I don't appreciate this. And once I fussed and did all what I was gonna do and shut up, these words came to me. He says, well, these people come, and I knew it was coming from him because it used words that I typically didn't use. And he said, these people come here and they clamor after the form. And I give them what they want. Now, tell me, what do you want? And after I thought about it, and after that, I'm like, what are you here for anyway? Front row? What are you here about? And from that point to the end of my trip, I didn't even line up. I came at the last minute. I sat where they sat me, and I was happy. And so I told you the coconut story, the story about the robe, all of that. And so my journey, I'm so happy to have this journey. It was a fabulous, and it still is the most fabulous thing I've ever experienced. I am a completely different person than I was before I met him. I have had things happen that pushed me towards him that I had no idea there was even a him. And I can look back and see his handiwork on my life. You just have to be patient and loving and kind. He's there, and he's there. He was there before I knew who he was, and he's still there. And that's not to say my life has been peaches and cream, but I can always tell, I can always see his handiwork. So I want to thank you all for this opportunity. I'm so thrilled that I was asked to do this and to share my stories. And I'm assuming I probably left something out, but I'd be perfectly happy to share with someone if they wanted to give me a call or ask questions or something like that. I'd be perfectly happy to share any of this with you because I have more stories. I do have more experiences, and I know people want to hear them. So right now, what I'd like to do is to leave you with a song. I'd like to leave you with a song. And the name of this song is called I look to you. That's exactly what we do. We look to him for everything. I don't care what's going on in the world. We look to him and we get our answers and we feel our love. As I lay me down, heaven hear me now. I'm lost without a cause, after giving it my all. Winter storms have come and darkened my sun. After all that I've been through, who on earth can I turn to? I look to you. I look to you. After all my strength is gone, in you I can be strong. I look to you. I look to you. And when melodies are gone, in you I hear a song. I look to you. Oh Lord, about to lose my breath. No more fighting left, to think no more, searching through that open door. Every road I have taken led to my regret. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Nothing to do but lift my head. I look to you. I look to you. And when all my strength is gone, in you I can be strong. I look to you. I look to you. Yes, and when melodies are gone, in you I hear a song. I look to you. My levees are broken, the stones are falling, tumbling down on me. I need the rain is falling. I need you to set me free and take me far away from the battle. I need you to set me free. I look to you. I look to you. Oh yes. And when all my strength is gone, in you I can be strong. I look to you. I look to you. Oh Lord. And when melodies are gone, in you